Another Indie World Showcase, a Nindies, whatever you want to call them, is out. And the reactions from as soon as this was announced just makes me feel bad. Look, I'm all for critiquing companies. Multiple times on this channel, I've criticized Pokemon, I've criticized Paper Mario, but those games are by multi-billion-dollar companies that deserve the criticism. They deserve the bashing from time to time. I feel bad reading the reactions whenever an indie showcase has been announced the last year or so, since these games are just doomed to be bashed because they're not from a big game Nintendo Direct. People have been starving for a full-on Nintendo Direct, but it seems because of the pandemic, Nintendo has really shifted a lot of their plans. So we've only really gotten indies lately, and that's fine. Just because an announcement isn't another 45-minute Smash Direct doesn't mean we need to doo-doo all over these indie games. Lots of people work really hard on putting these indie games together, and they can't handle the refusal to buy protesting, the bashing, the tough social media wave of hate, like these big companies can. And it's one thing if these games were being bashed just because they're not fun or could be done differently, but that's not what's happening. These indie games are being bashed because they're not Super Mario, or Metroid, or Kirby, or whatever major series. So a lot of people just attack these poor indie games, which indirectly is somewhat an attack on the people who poured their hearts into these games, but a lot of people attack these poor indie games without even playing the games. I believe indie games should be supported more. These smaller studios and games are the ones who will listen to fans. They're the ones who truly are trying to make something their fans will love. At an affordable price, I may add. Bug Fables doesn't exist if not for a studio of hardworking people who heard a bunch of Paper Mario fans' outrage over the last decade plus and made a game that's closer to the first two Paper Marios than the last 4 entries in the actual Paper Mario series have been. It stinks going into these indie live showcases and just seeing a chat filled with people destroying these games they never had any intention of playing anyways, just because they want bigger games to be announced. Trust me, I want Diamond and Pearl remakes to be announced. I want a new 3D Mario Adventure. I want a new Star Fox game, a Kirby game, an F-Zero, Bayonetta. I want a Nintendo Direct, but just because we haven't been getting them doesn't mean by default it's okay to trash the stuff we have been getting just because we want what we want. You want to get on New Paper Mario for not being like the first two? Go ahead, that's fair game. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense to attack some indie platformer that has nothing to do with Paper Mario because it's not Paper Mario, for example. That makes no sense. That comes off as childish in my opinion. No one is forcing anyone to buy these indie games. That's not what Nintendo is doing. I feel like some people feel like, oh, they're not giving me a direct, so they think I'm just gonna buy whatever they throw at us? Yeah, right. I don't believe those are Nintendo's intentions at all. I think they're just doing exactly what they call it. They're just showcasing their indie games, giving these small companies and games a bit of spotlight. And that's great. We should support indie companies thriving. The more games, the better. It means more jobs for more people in the industry. It means more pressure on these bigger companies to make better games when indie knockoffs, and I say that respectfully, are better than the actual AAA series games they're mimicking. It means more good games for us to play. Indie games succeeding is a win all around the board. I understand the want for the AAA series games to be announced in a more interesting way than just being randomly dropped on Twitter. But I still don't think that's a fair excuse to use bashing these neat indie titles as your way to voice your opinions. There's better ways than that. Let's be nicer.